Hey, sickos. I'm LJ,
And I'm Toe.
and this is.
Say psycho right now.
Hey, sickos. Thanks so much for joining us back this week, especially after Toes of the giggling granny case last week.
Listen, that was a great case.
You are hereby notorious for picking the most psychotic lunatics I've ever heard of.
Oh, yeah. Just wait until you hear about my next lunatic.
Is that the Murdoch murders or a separate one? Because I know we're studying
Uh,
several apiece right now.
no. So that's going to be the Elizabeth Smart case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into her captor. I don't want to give it all away, but he's a real fucking weirdo.
I'm excited to hear about that because I will say, I don't want to go obviously giving away everything for your case, so I'll just keep it short and sweet on this one. But I have watched and just generally consumed media a fair amount regarding that case.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when we were talking about the fact that you're covering that case, you were mentioning that there was kind of like a deficit of coverage about the actual abductor,
Mm-hmm.
the criminal. I can't remember his name, but I'm sure you've got that
Yeah,
down.
so again, not to spoil it all, but just there is a story about how he came to be the way that he was, and so I'm gonna try and go at least a little bit into that in that episode. So that'll be the next episode after this one that airs.
That's fantastic. I'm always so interested in those backgrounds. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
There's something to be said for these cases where people are just like real whack jobs. I think as people who you know, like I wouldn't say we're we're perfectly stable, but we're definitely not that messed up. It's always just kind
No,
of like.
I think it's just I don't know, like maybe it interests us because it's like we've been through shit, but we don't kill people. So
Right. And I was reading something the other day and I would be interested to just do more research in general on why there's like a portion of the world really who is so invested in true crime. Like, is it a self-preservation thing? Is it a trauma response? Is it like I read somewhere too, like in my Googles, like, why am I interested in true crime? I know I'm not a murderer. You know what I mean? There was
right.
something that was talking about and I wish I had the source for this, but just consider this like a goog, a late night goog. This wasn't intended to be like on the pod at the time. But I was reading that a lot of women or self-identifying women in particular are more inclined to be interested in true crime
You know
because.
what? That is a
Mhm.
fact. Oh,
Yeah, and
sorry. You were gonna give a reason.
yeah, because of empathy and
Mm,
just we have higher levels of empathy, and also just statistically we're at a more a statistical disadvantage, like more likely to be a victim of an instance of true crime. So it's also kind of like a primitive instinct or even a trauma response for some people to like want to consume as much true crime media as they can to kind of like mentally prepare themselves for any scenario that could potentially come up. I don't know the accuracy or the validity, but I felt like there was something there. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I can see that.
Yeah, I don't know the accuracy on the reasoning, but I will tell you, bitches love true crime.
Yeah, that's a fact. I mean, we have not like set up. I mean, now we have. I was gonna say we haven't set up like a specific target demographic other than like, people who like true crime. Like that's our demographic. But just like by happenstance, like when we go in and we pull our data, it's like 97% women. Not because we're marketing to women, but
Yeah.
because, I
And
I
like
think there's just more of an interest.
I'm not going to say what I do for a living just for security purposes, but I will say that in my job I deal with a lot of people. And if you're a listener who's met me through my job, then you know what that is, but I'm not going to say it on the pod. But I interact with a lot of people, and occasionally I do get to talking about the pod, and you know, I tell people to look us up, and I would say probably like roughly 90% of the people that are actually interested are women. A majority of the men or male presenting people, when they find out it's a true crime podcast, they're like, oh, yeah, no, you're fucking weird.
Yeah, yeah. I get that. I mean, John, like,
And then the
from
women are like, oh my God, I love true crime. I'm going to
absolutely.
look you up.
And that would be us. I'm like, now we've officially you guys will by the time this episode airs, you guys should have access. We've just gotten our samples in real time. This is back in
Yeah.
mid-March when we're recording this. We just got our samples in for the store and stuff, and I'm
Hmm.
like so hyped to wear them in public and have a bunch of crazy bitches like me be like, "Oh my god, what is that?" And me get to be like, "It's me talking about murder." You know what I mean? Like, come join me. Like, if you're interested, I'm just like excited to
Absolutely.
meet the other people like us who have that interest.
Check out our merch. It's super cute.
It is super cute. You can get that real shameless plug real quick at saypsychorightnow.com. It is us. We
Yeah. And all of the designs have our logo on the back. I know a lot of people love our logo.
So yeah, real quick, shameless plug because when in Rome, if you guys are interested in the merch, it is super cute. You can check that out at saypsychorightnow.com. Right now, we've kind of got a tie-dye thing going. I don't know if that's gonna be forever, but at least for right now, like it's a vibe. We're just feeling it. We've
Yeah.
got crop tops, t-shirts, sweatshirts. We've also got some like a fleece blanket and even like stickers. And the stickers, I made sure to keep them like as cheap as possible because we realized that like if you guys are taking our stickers out and about and like putting them on your car or something, that's advertising for us. So we want to keep the cost for stuff like that, especially as low as possible. So
Hmm.
that's like a real quick like add-on thing that you could put on. And we do take installment payments. So just for your knowledge.
Yeah. As of the time of this recording, we have, I think, sorry, what installment payments do we have?
Yeah, we can take installment payments via Zip,
Hmm.
Shop Pay, and PayPal for sure. But
Yeah.
if you're on any other platform that allows you to like go through their browser to shop anywhere,
Yeah. Like Klarna, for example, I think is one.
yeah, Klarna's one. Like we don't have like a direct plug-in or anything like that that will indicate it, but you should still be able to use Klarna to shop with our store.
And as of the time of this recording, we are working on Sezzle and Afterpay, but to be determined.
Yeah, to be determined. We just, legal paperwork and stuff like that is just underway. There are certain thresholds that we need to be at to be able to get approved and stuff. So, like, follow, subscribe, order some stuff if you can or want to. If you don't, that's fine.
Absolutely.
But yeah, if you do, then that shows that we have sales to get us approved with like the big boy sites, So that would be fantastic. And that's enough for like our little plug for right now that kind of just organically happened. That wasn't a planned
Yeah.
thing. I'm just really hyped about my clothes. But for right now, we can just kind of start getting into, oh my God, I was going to say the meat of the case, but that feels inappropriate. We're
Absolutely. That was a
woof. I
poorly
hated
timed.
that. Okay, this is a bad episode to decide to say that on. So we're just gonna say we're gonna get into it. We're just gonna get into it, you guys. So today we are going to be talking about a case that takes place in Colorado where a
Fucking
mother
Colorado. What is
wait,
going
was
on over
this
there?
another Colorado case? Or was this already counted in the ones that we were talking about when we were like, wait, we're having like a weird Colorado situation?
What? It might have been already in there.
Okay, okay. Either way, Colorado, get it together. Get it together. And this isn't
Literally,
even
what is
like
going on over there? Like, I I would like to know.
so much. And this is not even like an old case. I mean, we're talking like 2010s. You know what I mean? Like things wrapped up. Well, yeah, no. Okay, so from 2010 to 2018, pretty much before they were busted. Okay, so this is not like
This is
an
like
era's old
recent.
case.
Okay.
Yeah, this is really recent. And this is a mother and daughter duo, right? So we're talking a family business, but this is not a pizza shop, bitches,
Love
okay?
love a good family business, but
Yeah, except that this family business is a funeral home that they're using as essentially a cover up, for lack of a better
hate
word.
that.
Yeah. So their primary business is that they're a funeral home, right? So they're offering, end of life services in terms of like, the mortician stuff, like
Sure,
everything that happens.
everything that, all the full
Yeah.
service croak services.
Yeah, full croak services, which would include things like in my experience, they would not my personal experience croaking, but I've lost loved ones, including my husband. So I'm pretty familiar with having to make the tough decisions of like, do you want cremation? Do you want embalming, open casket, closed casket? Like, do we need to get programs done up? Like,
Yeah, it's a
do
lot
we
and it's an overwhelming
yeah.
process. And just as a side note, like not to this extent, obviously. I mean, and I don't know much about the case, but I have the gist of it. But this industry can be so predatory.
It really can. And just an example from like personal experience, like when I went to go and pick up my husband's ashes,
Yes.
right? They had me sit and wait. And of course, they've got the tissues, they've got this like sad, peaceful music that you don't want to be listening to playing. You've got like a 500-year-old man who's like sitting there waiting to talk about his, inevitable croaking coming up, and you're sitting there 20 something waiting for your husband's ashes, old guys looking at you, it's just
Not a
uncomfortable.
fun
And
day.
no, you're like ugly crying. This is not where you want to be. In my situation, my wedding would have been in like 34 days from the day that he died. So it was just like a really awful time all around. And this lady approaches me with some tissues. She's like, "Here, like I got these for you. And also here's a folder with some information you might want to read. And there are some pamphlets in there for you too." And I'm like, "Okay, well, maybe this is like grief support groups or something." Bitch, no, it was jewelry pamphlets of like you could get your loved ones like fingerprints on
Jesus
jewelry for like a
Christ.
small fee of like $800 or something. I just pulled that price out of my butt, but it was astronomical, unaffordable, like something we objectively could not
Right.
afford.
And he was already
And
cremated.
yeah, he was already cremated at this point. And so obviously I was there to pick up his ashes. So I like go over to the lady and I'm like, I can't afford this, but I can't remember if I said this, but it was like fingerprint jewelry, like with their fingerprint. But I was like, if you guys have his fingerprint, like, can I please like have a copy of that? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
want that like for myself. Thankfully they didn't push back or anything. Like they did give me that, and I was able to go and get a necklace that was, in my opinion, better than the ones that I was looking at, like more of what I want, like more that was my style. And compared to the hundreds of dollars, it's like $45, and I wore it every literally The only reason why I'm not even wearing it right now is because I had to take all my jewelry off to have surgery a couple weeks ago, and I just never got around to putting it back on. You know what I mean? But like,
Absolutely.
I've still been wearing it a year and a half later. My partner's super supportive of that, which gold star for him. But anyway, point being, that's just like one example of how like predatory and crazy these places can be. But that said, I do want to give a shout out to like just any morticians and like funeral home service people in general who are doing the job and doing it right. Because that is a damn hard. That's a bad cuss. I haven't slept in like 24 hours, so ignore that. It's just, it's a hard job. It's a hard, thankless job.
Absolutely. It is. It's a
And yeah, and for somebody to do that and do it well is a service that is meaningful and will be meaningful to people for the rest of their lives, whether you hear about it or not. Like, just thank you from a widow to those of you who are in the business
we
and are doing it
salute
right, because
you.
fact salutes are out. Come and get yours. Come and get your salute.
Also, yeah, we're not
Oh.
gonna yeah.
So now that said, the people that we're talking about today, no salutes for you, Glen Coco. Like,
No
these are,
salutes for them at all.
yeah. So these crazy bitches. So basically, they're using their funeral home as more of like a cover up so that people who are wanting to buy human remains for scientific, medical, or educational purchases are able to buy those body parts from them through the funeral home. So they're like using their funeral home to basically like double dip and turn a profit in a completely different market, if that makes sense.
Great.
Yeah, super unethical is the bottom line there. So, the first person we're going to talk about in our case today, to get a little more specific, her name is Megan Hess. And she
Mm-hmm.
was born on August 16th of 1976 to the second main character here in this story today, her mother, Shirley Koch. Megan was a Leo, and I just like to give these little asides because, you know, we're like spooky people. We like to just kind of get into like the fun part for a second. But
Yeah.
Leo's trademark weaknesses are generally their lack of self-awareness, which Megan is like the
Mm.
poster child for a lack of self-awareness if I've ever heard.
Oh,
So I did try to find the date of birth for Shirley, but not much information was available on that. So sorry to not have any like icebreaker on her. But I was able to determine that at least at the time of this podcast recording, she would be 69 years old. And you know, obviously, if I don't know her date of birth, I don't know her zodiac sign, but I can confirm with pretty much sheer confidence that she sucks at least as much as her daughter does. And
okay.
that
That's
the
a
apple
thing.
just doesn't fall far from the tree in this case. They both suck. So, Megan, she was a Colorado funeral home operator until she was accused of giving people fake ashes. So, grieving
Mm.
families were told that these ashes that they were receiving were the ashes of their loved ones. But the ashes they received were really the cremains from bins mixed with the remains of just different cadavers, whoever was on hand, just enough to like appease a family to where they felt like, oh, yeah, that's enough ashes. They won't ask questions.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, super disturbing. As somebody who has their husband in a jar on their desk, it's a nice jar, it's an urn, but you know what I mean. Like, you know, as somebody who like has held on to their spouse's remains or whatever, like that's so disturbing just to think that
Yeah.
like, you know, oh, that might be like Fred and Joe and Todd from up the way. Like, no, that's so fucked up. Like,
I mean, even like, okay, not a spouse objectively, but when I had my dog cremated, my mom was
I love you. I'm sorry to poof, but you know I love and respect your dog loss. It's very difficult thing to go through. Sorry, continue. It's just the transition from husband to dog that got
listen.
me.
Uh, so LJ, off the pod, LJ and I have talked in depth comparing our husband and dog cremation
Exactly.
experiences, which I think is part of the reason why this is so funny.
Exactly.
But no, my mom was like, I hope it's really her. Like, I just hope they don't just give you some random dog. And I'm like, that's so disturbing because you just never know.
Yeah, but I will say, and this is just like an aside that's like also disturbing. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that you would agree. I think you have agreed in the past when we talked about it that
Yeah.
the way that your dog was handled throughout their passing was so much more respectable than the way my poor husband was.
Okay,
I
so
mean, God love the vets.
my dog, you guys, first of all, shout out to my vets because they're great. And I have a friend that works there as a tech, and she was great throughout the whole process. But anyways, so my dog came in this like gorgeous wooden box. Okay, so like I was shopping for a custom urn, and like I was about to drop so much money on like this custom dog urn because I was like balls deep in dog grief.
Oh yeah.
But then I picked her up from the vets, and she was in this, like, her ashes were in this gorgeous box. Like, I'm pretty sure it's like hand carved, and it's like really like solid heavy wood. And then if when you open it up, it's like beautifully labeled with her name, and it has like a little dry flower attached to the like bag with her actual ashes, and it just like really nicely presented.
Yeah.
Um
And just to like pose the juxtaposition here,
that fucking word again,
I love
juxtaposition.
an opportunity to use that word. So just to really like give you guys a feel for like just the sheer difference in experiences here. So Toe picks her doggy up in like a glamour engraved wooden box, like fully prepared to have to like purchase an urn and this, that, whatever.
Yeah, I did not order that. Like, that's just, that
No,
was the standard package. That's
that's
how it
just
came.
the bare bones, right?
Yeah.
So I go to get Ian, my husband, and they brought out like, I mean, think like a shoebox, but like a little smaller. And
God.
inside the shoebox, there was a baggie that, like, if I didn't know better, I would just think that was like a big old bag of drugs is in there, just like sealed off like some baggie. And I brought my own urn because they had said, like, we can help you like transfer the remains if you want to. And when I get there and I see that I'm getting like a shoebox and a Ziploc, I'm like, yes, please. Like, I don't want to get husband on my shoes. Like, what is going
Oh my
on?
God.
Yeah, yeah. Not only that, but they also lost his wedding ring, which they only
No.
found when my car broke down. I got in my car, I strapped my husband's urn into the passenger seat, and I backed up, went to like go and pull out of the parking lot, and like just when I got to the point where I would be like really inconveniently in the way of anybody trying to get in or out because it was like a one-way situation,
Yeah.
my car broke down there and I just like crying. Like my husband's urn strapped into the passenger side. He was just transferred over from his shoebox. His ring is still unaccounted for. And so I had to like go back in. My car's still blocking everything up. I'm like, my husband's in the car and I don't have his ring and now I'm blocking up your parking lot. Guys, it was a shit show from start to finish. Anyway, that's on life or end of life experiences for dogs versus people. Do not recommend being a people.
Absolutely.
Bullshit.
Like, honestly, I was so touched by that gorgeous box.
Yeah, I could have stand to have been touched by something because God help us all.
God help
Um,
us all.
I think this case is a real testimony to like, unfortunately, like, and I'm not by any means saying this about all like people who work in the funeral industry or people who like work in hospice care. I'm sure the majority of you guys are saints, but there are like a few bad eggs in there who like
Mm,
just don't really seem to have like or maybe they're even like desensitized and they just don't have that like sense of humanity and respect for like what an end of life really means to the the deceased and to their loved ones, and these people are that, you know what I mean? We don't
Yeah.
want to give everybody a bad rep, but they are that demographic of this industry, and it's very sad.
Very.
Tell
Yeah, that's horrible. We just,
the firsthand victims, so the deceased, they certainly can't advocate for themselves, but they still have family members left behind who, and as much as we can highlight, the lives of the people who have been impacted, whether it be the deceased or those, left mourning, that we honor, their role in this as much as possible, as much as the information's available. We're going to try to make it a point to do that today.
absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to get into the grand jury indictment and the information regarding the case that was in there. So there is a grand jury indictment. It stated that from 2010 to 2018 that Haas and Koch met with grieving families and offered to cremate remains and return them to the families at the cost of $1,000 or more. But
Is that like a standard cost?
okay, so I will say that I'm a bit privileged from a financial standpoint, if you can be, when it comes to the funeral expenses. I mean, we were all in such a state of shock because it was very sudden. But in our situation, Ian's parents flew out right away when they heard that he passed.
Love them so much. Shout out
Yeah,
them.
shout out them. They are saints on earth. Best thing that I ever could have inherited if I didn't get a penny from Ian passing, but I just got them. It would have been more than enough. They are amazing people. But because of the circumstances, Ian, he was not somebody who had money. I was not somebody who had money, like was a single mom, I mean, I just didn't have money like that to be able to cover a funeral at the drop of the hat. Not to mention, we just thrown every penny that we had
Into
at
your
a
wedding.
that was supposed to be in 34 days. I'd bought my dress
Yeah.
4 days before for like $2,000. You know what I mean? So,
For
like,
context, they were COVID married.
yeah, that's
For those
true.
of you that don't know us from outside of the pod, they were COVID married, so that's why we're saying husband, but they were planning
Husband,
a wedding. Yeah.
yes, it was one of those like elopements, and then it was just like, okay, well, now we can like start planning a wedding and yada yada. So, anyway, point being that they came out and very graciously his family helped to pay for his funeral, and like the bulk of what I remember from that experience of like sitting down to like talk finances,
Hmm.
and I'm just telling you guys this because this is a case where we're going to need some like icebreakers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you can have them in a case like this, but like comedy relief, you know what I mean? And me and Ian's mom still laugh about this one, as sad as the situation is. So the guy who sat down with us, his name was Doc, which is like such a like trademark like funeral home guy name.
I
It's
mean,
just
is it?
his act, well, like fake doctor. I don't know, like that's how it
Okay.
felt, but like
Yeah.
that was
No,
like his actual government name was Doc.
that's
Yeah. So I was like, okay, weird. Unless your name is Doc, then like shout out all you docs. We love you. We stand.
short for something
I don't know. On his business card, it was literally like Doc,
like
not doctor, not like
like
just Doc.
Docatropolis.
Yeah, no, it was just ye old Doc. So Doc, as we're giving him all the information, it's like, the stuff that's going to be on the death certificate, like full name, date of birth, what was his job, like where did he pass, we're going through all of these things just to verify
Right.
that what the ME had was correct. And then the guy the guy says, was he a junior or senior? And I looked at him like he had 5 heads, and I was like, "He was a junior." And then everybody is looking at me doing that, like, turn your head to the side, fast blink thing, like, what is she talking about? And Ian's mom chimes in, he's like, "No, he wasn't a junior or a senior. He was just Ian." And then I, like, got quiet for a second. I was like, "Oh my god, a junior or a senior? I thought you were asking me if he died young or old." I was like, why is this even a question? Like, he was young as shit. This is stupid. Like, this is like the insult to injury, like, table circle, like,
Yeah, like,
what's going
you're
on?
probably like, "What the fuck? I gave you his date of birth. Can't you do math?"
Exactly. Oh, hated it.
Jesus.
0 stars. So, anyway, I hope that gave you guys a little dark humor laugh. You gotta laugh or you'll cry, honestly. So,
Absolutely.
going on further with this case, let's see. Okay, so we were talking about the services of $1,000 or more. I would venture to say that that's probably on the low end of services, just based on my experience, because
Okay.
unfortunately, I had a friend also lose her husband right after Ian, unfortunately, just a few weeks
Yes.
later. And I know that like they had to crowd fund for funeral expenses and they did not get extravagant, and it definitely was in excess of 1,000. I can confirm that much
Okay.
without giving
Yeah.
away their information, you
As
know.
far as cremation goes, because like everybody in my immediate family has been buried.
Right.
So as far as cremation goes, again, dog is the only point of reference that I have.
Yeah,
So, okay,
which,
continue.
which is valid. Yeah. So now at this point in the story, we're at the year 2008.
Oh,
So at this point, Hess creates a nonprofit called the Sunset Mesa receiving, tax write-offs and financial, I'm sure, like grants, donations, things of that nature that would not either otherwise be possible without nonprofit 501c3 status.
okay.
Yeah. So at this point,
What are they saying what are they saying the donations are for? Like families that can't afford funeral expenses?
I that was unclear in my research, but I would certainly imagine that that would have to be in the wheelhouse of the story that they were spinning.
Okay, yeah, that checks out.
Yeah. So at this point, Hess and Koch would ship the bodies and body parts of these families' loved ones under an alias business name that they created called
Ooh.
Donor Services to kind of like separate that from Sunset Mesa intentionally, even though they're really technically they're the same. They're operating out of the same address. They're the same people,
Right.
the same bodies being serviced, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they're just double dipping. They have the funeral home and now they have donor services. And the donor services portion was a portion that was created to operate as the body brokerage. Now,
Okay.
under this separate company, they also shipped bodies and body parts of people who had tested positive for infectious diseases such as hepatitis B and C and HIV, despite telling buyers that these cadavers were disease free.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And it was detailed in court records that Koch's role in the scheme was chopping up the bodies. I think that it
Mm.
seemed like there was like initially it seems like maybe there was like effort to downplay involvement, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And then that came out from the prosecution and it was kind of like, oh, true, like I did do that. So I guess like I kind of was involved. Like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty integral role there.
Yeah, that's a pretty big one. That's not like, oh, like I had them sign the paperwork, but I didn't really read it or understand what they were signing. You know what I mean? Like the families or something like that. Like if it wasn't explained to you, you didn't take the time to read it. Like yeah, that could be reckless and negligent, and you're involved at that point. But is that the same as like being fully in the know and chopping up the bodies? Like
Nah,
no.
you complacent as
Yeah,
fuck.
nah, she's all in, okay? She's just trying to cover her own skin, but she's definitely like very much involved in this.
She says,
So,
"Be right back. Got to sever an arm."
yeah, she said equal partnership sign here. Um
Absolutely.
yeah, so the Department of Justice is on record in this case stating that in at least dozens of instances Hess and Koch did not allow family wishes and neither discussed nor obtained authorization for donor services to transfer descendants' bodies or body parts to third parties. And in the few cases that families agreed to donating, Hess and Koch sold the remains of the dead bodies beyond the family's authorization, which was often limited to things such as small tissue samples, tumors, or
Mm.
parts of skin that maybe were authorized, but they would deliver the entire body
Okay,
or
so
more.
wait, is selling body parts legal to some extent?
So I'm going to get into that in a minute. Hold that
Okay.
thought because it will not go ignored. I can promise you that.
Great. Thanks.
Perfect. Yeah, no problem. So, but yeah, in addition, they delivered what they claimed were the cremated remains to the families, although frequently that was not the case because remember, they've over delivered what they might have been authorized in some cases to give to these third parties.
Okay.
In a rare chance that they did receive authorization at all, they were giving more than was authorized, if that makes sense. And then
Okay.
again, returning back cremains that were, more likely than not their deceased loved one, because most of their deceased loved one has been body brokered out to a facility. So
God, loathe entirely.
truly awful. So we're still going to be focusing here on the prosecutor's filing at this point. So
Okay.
they really focused on how grotesque the nature of this scheme was. And this is described not only by the prosecutors, but just pretty widely in media that you'll find on this specific topic as being one of the most significant body part cases in recent US history in terms of body brokerage. As a matter of fact, the federal case was triggered by a 2016 to 2018 Reuters investigative series about the sale of body parts in the United States. And here's where we're going to get into answering some of what you were asking before, Toe. So it's kind of
Okay.
coming full circle here. So the sale of body parts in the United States is an unregulated industry.
Okay.
So a lot of what we're going to be talking about until I tell you otherwise is information that I received from Reuters Investigative, and they have articles published online that I use to kind of compile this information. So Reuters received information from former employees that Hess and Koch conducted unauthorized dismemberments of bodies, and a few weeks after an expose was published by Reuters on the funeral home, the FBI raided the business. Throughout that process, according to that same article, at least four ex employees were interviewed about their time working for the duo. The article went on to say that one ex employee named Carrie Escher, she said that she was especially troubled by the practices of Hess's mother, Shirley, who worked at the facility. So Escher and Shirley, that's Koch in this case.
Okay.
So Etcher and Koch, to minimize any confusion, who embalmed and dismembered bodies, Koch would pull teeth from some of the corpses in an effort to extract the gold in the crowns or fillings.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, this is a direct quote from Carrie. It says, "She showed me her collection of gold teeth one day. She had sold a different batch a year prior, and they took the whole family to Disneyland in California on the gold that they cashed in." And that's end quote. When Koch was contacted by Reuters for comment, all she had to offer was no thank you. She just didn't want to talk about it. Just didn't want to talk about it. No thank you. How about no thank you from the people whose corpses you were meddling with unnecessarily, like for
Yeah.
reasons that were not essential? Like just no respect or concern for the dead at all. It's so disgusting. So, anyway, back to the legality here. In the United States, it is illegal to sell organs for transplant. So
Okay.
we have a donor list. I'm sure anybody who's like watched Grey's Anatomy or anything like that, you see these donor lists. These are people who are generally on like some type of a registry where if you experience some type of trauma, like a car accident or something like that, and your organs are still viable, or if God forbid, you know, just some trauma where your organs are viable but you are not. Got me?
Yeah. Right.
You or your family as a proxy, if you're not formally on an organ donation like registry,
Yeah.
your organs can be donated on behalf of your family members if you're not formally like if that's not a choice that you formally have made known. Now, organs must be ethically donated to recipients via that list. Like you
Okay.
cannot just like say, "Oh, okay, well, I've got, you know, my uncle over here, he was in an automobile accident. We're about to pull the plug. I hear that you need a kidney. So if you give me $50,000, I'll make sure that that gets passed along right over to you when we go to do things." You know what I
Okay.
mean? Like you
Yeah.
can't do that. Like that's not acceptable. That said, selling body parts that are not viable for transplant, such
Okay.
as heads, arms, spines, any body parts that you would typically see used in research or education. So,
Okay.
non transplant situations, more education, medical exploration, things of that nature. Those are not regulated by federal law in the same way that transplants are. They're actually just not regulated at all. So these types of transactions are the ones that Hess and Koch are engaging in this situation. Few state laws provide any, you know, cushion in that department. There's not really any state laws telling them that the sale of body parts, you know, that are not viable for transplant, basically nothing telling them what they can or can't do for the most part.
Okay.
So, like, technically, it's not illegal to dissect and sell human body parts, but the issue here is like context is everything, right?
Right.
So, in a medical setting where proper consent has been received, yes, these body parts can be donated, paid for if they're not viable for transplant purposes. But where it becomes an issue here from a legality standpoint is the lack of transparency, the fraudulent paperwork, the deceit in how the bodies were managed. It crosses a line from like, oh, this is a gray area. This is, we're just selling these non-viable body parts and they're not for transplant, so it's okay. Like, no,
Right.
it's not, because you're a funeral director who's double dipping and committing acts of fraud against the families of deceased people, and therefore like tampering and dismembering, mutilating corpses essentially, and returning ashes that are not their loved ones' ashes to them. And then also the health issues as well. Like you cannot, whether it's a transplant or a non-transplant, you can't lie about disease status. That's
Right.
a biohazard. So all of these things are obviously major issues here beyond the fact that they're selling these body parts. It's not the act of selling
Okay.
that's illegal. It's literally everything else in this situation.
Okay. That's what I was kind of wondering because I was like, wait, I didn't think it was legal at all to sell body parts. I had no idea that this whole like, you know, that there was a legal option to sell body parts. That this is news to me. So,
Yeah, and now that said, I'm sure that there's like appropriate licensing that has to be done by the places to receive these body parts as well. It's not like
sure.
you can't just your neighbor hears that your loved one passed away and they can't just be like, I'll give you 20,000 for his foot. Like that's not going to fly.
Honestly, if
Um
feet are going for 20,000, like I could possibly like sacrifice a toe.
oh God. Send help. So
Can I
um
like just like throw a toe out there, like get a couple grand for it?
God, I'm pretty sure that's what Feet Finder is for.
Okay, so I actually tried it.
Get out.
I didn't have much luck. So what I found when I got on Feet Finder, not to sidetrack too hard, guys, but again, we need to break this up with some humor, right? So what I found when I got on Feet Finder is that so I'm getting on like with like, I just took some pictures of my freshly pedicured toes in my bedroom, No, these people have intense feet pics. I mean,
Stop.
it is like a staged foot photo shoot. Like I cannot compete.
I'm like, I could never, not because like, oh, I could never sell pictures of my feet. No, if somebody was stupid enough to pay for photos of my toes, like I would probably do it. I could use a buck. However, my feet are nasty and nobody wants to see that shit just because of injuries I've had to my feet and stuff. Like it's just a
Yeah.
no for me, dog. Like y'all don't want to see
Yeah. So
nobody
I
freaking
thought
out.
like here I thought if I just like got a cute little pedicure, like I would be golden and good to go. No. When I tell you, shout out to these people on Feet Finder because they are really putting in the work out here, you guys. The intense feet photo shoots are like, I mean,
Not your mama's pedicure.
it's not. It's so competitive.
That's
Like
hilarious.
if
You
you
go,
can
girls. Way to
yeah.
milk it for what you can, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, it's really it's no joke. It's a very serious endeavor and I applaud the Feet Finder people that are, making all this money because I it wasn't for me.
Because Toe was not prepared for the toe competition earlier. He was like, but I am Toe.
Like
It
I'm
is not
literally
enough.
it's
It
not
is not
enough
enough.
to be a literal whole entire toe.
God. All right. So, no way to segue here, really, but we got to get back on track just for the
Back
sake
on
of
track.
getting back on track. Although I do appreciate your anecdote because it did offer the comedic relief that I'm sure we all needed for a moment. So,
Thanks.
when Americans leave their body to science, they are also donating to commerce, essentially. So,
Okay.
cadavers and body parts, especially those of poor people, so like people in a lower socioeconomical demographic, they are the people who are more likely to end up in the event of their passing being essentially sold in a thriving and largely unregulated market. Their body parts are more likely to be sold, and the
I
reason
hate that.
I know. It's very classist and predatory, which is why like I feel like it's really important to talk about this as well because this is a part of the case. Even though we're not specifically talking about Hess and Koch, we are because this is what they're doing.
Okay.
So people in lower socioeconomic classes who engage in sex work or are homeless or maybe suffer from some type of drug addiction, things that are going to hinder them from a social status, from an economic
The
status.
people that society considers to be disposable.
Exactly. They're at higher risk of falling victim to this for profit cadaver market. And the
Wow.
reason for that is because their bodies are more likely to be disposed of via donation to science for profit if their bodies remain unclaimed. So these Jane Does, these John
Gotcha.
Does
Yeah.
who, are never identified because some law enforcement officers don't think that they take priority because of the manner in which they were found or what came back on their toxicology report or what corner they were found on, if you guys follow me. These are the people who are more likely to fall victim to that type of for-profit market rather than to, be potentially reunited with their families to receive some much needed closure. There's also a practice of offering cremations for free or discounted rates in exchange for signing a release for body part donations. And again, this practice is predatory because there are people like, imagine in my circumstance, like with Ian, God forbid if his parents or his grandma hadn't come together to help in this situation and make sure that we were able to take care of his funeral expenses. If it was all on me and they had said, look, we can offer cremations for free, but in exchange, we're going to need XYZ body parts, what choice would have had? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I mean, yeah.
And so I definitely, again, I acknowledge how privileged I was to have family that was able to assist in that situation because there are many people in a position just like mine who just I'm sure do not have the same support system and they fall victim to these scams. I mean, I don't know if scams is the right word, but
It's predatory practice
yeah,
for sure.
predatory practices. There we go. Thank you for
I mean, you
that.
can say it's not a scam, but it's like not a scam on like a technicality.
Exactly. Now, in Hess and Koch's specific situation, like I'm confident we can just call it a scam. It is what it is.
For
But
sure.
in just being more comprehensive and like more of like a blanket statement for this practice in general, you put it perfectly. It's just a predatory practice, and yeah, just not a scam off a technicality. And quite frankly, that's bullshit. So getting back into our perpetrators specifically, Hess committed crimes when she defrauded relatives of the deceased by lying about cremations and dissecting bodies and selling them without permission, obviously. Um,
Okay.
so the surgical training companies and other firms which bought these body parts, so like arms, legs, heads, and torsos, sorry to be graphic, but these are like the specific body parts that are listed to have been sold a lot of the times.
Right.
They actually did not know the origin of these body parts or that they'd been fraudulently obtained. So there's that as well. They're conducting their business as usual, not knowing at all that they're receiving body parts that had not been consented to being dispersed, body parts that are potentially biohazardous. So the companies were not prosecuted because they did not have that information. The
Okay.
documents were fraudulated. So I'm going back here. I'm going to read an excerpt from an article published by the Reuters investigation that we've been talking about. Start quote. As with other commodities, prices for bodies and body parts fluctuate with market conditions. Generally, a broker can sell a donated human body for about 3 to 5,000, though prices sometimes top 10,000. But a broker will typically divide a cadaver into 6 parts to meet customer needs. Internal documents from 7 brokers show a range of prices for body parts. And then it goes on to itemize some. So we have $3,575 for a torso with legs, $500 for a head, $350 for a foot, $300 for a spine. Body brokers,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So
I feel like a head should go for more.
okay, I was thinking that too. I'm like, that's literally like, I know it's not somebody's identity, but it is though. And
Yeah.
like your whole brain, like your whole noodles, like right up in there, just feels important. I get that a torso has like more organs,
I guess that's
like I
fair.
guess that checks out, but it just feels like the brain is like pretty freaking valuable, I don't know.
For
Um,
sure.
but I'm not the one making the prices, so don't at me.
Yeah. I mean, like, not that we should just be selling body parts in general, but
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, maybe just like chill with that practice in general.
for sure.
So continuing on with this excerpt that I'm going to read for you guys, it says body brokers also have become intertwined with the American funeral industry. At the time of the article, Reuters identified 62 funeral operators that have struck mutually beneficial business arrangements with brokers. The funeral homes provide brokers access to potential donors, and in return, the brokers pay morticians referral fees ranging from $300 to $1,430, according to broker ledgers and court records. These payments generate income for morticians to be able to provide to families who might not be able to otherwise afford even a simple cremation. But such relationships raise potential conflicts of interest by creating an incentive for funeral homes to encourage grieving relatives to consider body donation,
Yeah.
sometimes without fully understanding what might happen to the remains. This is a long excerpt, guys, so bear with me, but I feel like this has a lot of valuable information. So just note this is still a direct quote, okay? This is Steve Palmer talking at this point. He says some funeral home directors are saying cremation isn't paying the bills anymore. So let me see if I can help people harvest body parts. He says, I just think families who donate loved ones would have second thoughts if they knew that, like that these body parts are being harvested
Hmm.
and that the funeral home is receiving a cut for this, you know? And Steve Palmer's credentials, just that you guys are aware, he's an Arizona mortician who serves on the National Funeral Directors Association Policies Board. So
Okay.
he's a reputable guy on this topic.
Sure.
Yeah. So some morticians have made body donation part of their own businesses, like we were referencing above. In Oklahoma, we have it documented that two funeral home owners invested $650,000 in a startup body broker firm. In Colorado, a family operating a funeral home ran a company that dissected and distributed body parts from the same building. So, when a body is donated, few states provide rules governing dismemberment or use, or offer any rights to a donor's next of kin. Bodies
Hmm.
and body parts can be bought, sold, and leased again and again. As a result, it can be difficult to track what comes of the bodies of the donors, let alone ensure that they are handled with dignity.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going into now the actual court hearings with Hess and Koch. And we're going to get into the victims' families here because I think that part, like we talked about before, this is arguably the most important part, I would say. You know, obviously policy is important. We want policy changes and we want,
Sure.
more oversight, things like that, of course. But at the end of the day, these are real people who have really been through something very traumatic with how their loved ones have been handled. And some of them had things to say. So we're going to get into that now. So in court, 26 victims of Hess and Koch's scheme came forward and just shared this horrifying their own horrifying experiences of what they dealt with during the grieving process and the funeral processes with their loved ones. One woman in particular who came forward was Erin Smith, and she said that her mother was a very very sweet woman, and that's really all it said, was that she was very sweet, and then went on to be dismembered with her shoulders, knees, and feet all sold for profit. And that's not something that they consented to. And in that situation, like, it's just disgusting. You can't just take
God.
the liberty of deciding to do that. So Shirley Koch, Megan's mother, she was the one that primarily operated the Sunset Mesa Funeral Home. She was indicted. Well, I guess they were both indicted, rather, but she was the one who, like, really was the primary. She tried to put it off on her daughter, being like, oh, well, I'd kind of like pass the torch. Like, no, you didn't, Shirley. No, you didn't. They were both equally guilty. So they were both indicted in 2020 for 6 counts of mail fraud and 3 counts of illegal transportation of hazardous materials and for aiding and abetting. So both Hess and Koch had originally entered pleas of not guilty in Grand Junction, but changed their pleas to guilty to enter plea deals to reduce the sentence and drop the other more serious charges. Their plea deals required guilty pleas to mail fraud and aiding and abetting, but notably drops the 3 counts of illegal transportation of hazardous materials. Hess was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison on January 3rd of 2023. So very, very recent from the time that we're recording this
Yeah.
when the sentencings actually took place. My
About
God.
fucking time.
Yeah. And then Koch was sentenced to 15 years.
Okay.
Kind of unclear as to why, like, Hess got 20, Koch got 15. There wasn't really an information that I could see, that made that clear. But I do
Mm.
wonder about that. If
Uh,
you know or local and maybe have more insight than I was able to find, definitely drop a comment. I would be
I
interested.
wonder if the one that got less maybe took a deal to kind of like,
Give more information on
yeah,
the other party, which is very possible. I just wish that that information had been more readily accessible, but I couldn't pinpoint it. So if anybody
sure.
knows for sure, like drop a line. I would really be intrigued to know. So they were given sentences that punished them for the defrauding of relatives of the deceased by dissecting 560 corpses and
Jesus
selling
Christ.
body parts without permission. I know, that's insane. Specifically, they were punished for the mail fraud charges. They were fraudulating the donor forms with forged signatures and shipping body parts to third party companies that these third parties, we talked about, they didn't realize that they were being illegally obtained.
Sure.
Yeah, so I can only imagine how devastating it must be to the families to have the most serious and deplorable charges dropped. I don't
Yeah.
know why they needed a plea deal. You know what I mean? Like, I just why? Those little like why though memes? That's my brain right now. Like why though? Why?
Yeah. For sure.
So, but my heart really does go out to the victims' families because I feel like they should be sitting a lot longer than they are. The judge who oversaw the case vocalized concern that Hess didn't seem to assume any responsibility for the crime or show remorse. So instead of offering any bail or anything like that, they were just both ordered to prison immediately. I know we're backtracking a bit. I probably should have said that earlier, but because this would have been before the actual sentencing. You know what I
Okay.
mean? So the defense took the stance that Hess was being vilified as a monster, and they argued that she has made poor decisions as a direct result of a traumatic brain injury that she had experienced when she was 8 years,
Mm.
which that is like a trademark thing in a lot of cases that we cover where we
Yeah.
see head
Giggling
in-
granny. Hello.
yeah, yeah, and didn't don't quote me on this because I don't want to misspeak. I've consumed so much true crime lately. But did Dennis Nilsson have a head injury? I felt that he did. But I could be
Ooh. You
wrong.
know what? Not that I can remember, but I could be forgetting.
Okay. Did
I should know that because I covered that case. But
I need to Google it right now. Did Dennis Nilsson have a head injury? There is little okay. He didn't suffer a head injury, so I apologize for that.
okay.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking of Jeffrey Dahmer because there's so much
Mm,
correlation between Dahmer and Nilsson. I know Dahmer's a lot more
they
notorious.
kind of even look alike.
Yeah, it was weird when we were looking at that case. So just maybe because I know that Dahmer's like a more, I hate to say the word popular in this sense, but he's definitely a more like
Notorious.
common and notorious serial killer, at least here in the US. I think I just felt like there was a lot of overlap between
Yeah.
the two and they ran together a bit. But yeah, no head injury there. But it is a very common thing that we see in people who commit like really heinous crimes. And yeah, so that was their defense, was that she had received a TBI, a traumatic brain injury. But Hess declined to speak with the judge. Yeah, she just didn't want to. Koch did offer an apology in court and took responsibility, but I think we can all pretty much agree that the apology was like too little too late. I also kind of wonder if, Koch being sentenced like a little less was just because she was more apologetic. Maybe that's the vibe.
That could
Um,
be that. Yeah, for sure.
no, that's the only thing I can really think of, but I have to just like infer that. But if you guys know differently, let us know. Let's see. So, according to an article from Connecting Directors, Joy Christian, the daughter of Anne Holland, whose husband was dismembered without her consent, stated that she felt no remorse at all from the defendants. She said, I'm a Christian and I believe in forgiveness, and I was willing to forgive that, or I was willing to give that to them in the courthouse. But I won't forget. It's been a terrible, terrible trauma to the entire family. The article goes on to say that in addition to the prison terms, Hess and Koch both face multiple $250 fines and have been named in 7 lawsuits totaling millions of dollars. In pre sentencing statements, however, the women's attorneys argued that they, quote, didn't get rich, end quote, from the scheme, saying that Hess drives a 16-year-old car and is deep in debt. It seems that the defense's goal was to minimize these profoundly selfish crimes, which is an insult to the voiceless victims and their families.
Wow, you didn't get rich, so why did you keep fucking doing it?
Exactly. Like,
Like, I mean, it's a horrible crime. Don't get me wrong, but like, I mean, if they were making millions off of it, I could at least see
motive, I guess.
motive. Yeah, but like, I mean, if you're just like,
It's like, so you're telling me it wasn't lucrative, and also you're just a piece of shit out there dismembering bodies for literally no reason. I mean, either way, it's completely deplorable and they shouldn't be doing it. But I feel like that's insult to injury, just to
yeah,
be like,
I feel like that's a horrible defense because I feel like it just makes the whole thing worse.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's just literally no redeeming quality there in that defense. Like, if that's your defense, like, just quit your lawyer job because
Honestly, bad job doing your lawyer job.
I'll try harder next time. So yeah, this case was different than a lot of the ones that we covered. Although interestingly, what I was thinking as I was working on our calendar is this is a little bit reminiscent, not in the same right, but I think you can understand where my head is at,
Mm.
of the Amelia Dyer case. Just like different vibes, but similar, like predatory practices, just different
Yeah,
demographic and time.
yeah, kind of, a little
Yeah.
bit.
There's just overlap, you know what
There's
I
some
mean?
overlap in the like why didn't you choose a different career?
Yeah, yeah. It's just, these are not like cases that we find every day, you know what I mean? It's not like, I
Yeah,
guess it's just not like, and I hate to say this because I don't wanna trivialize anybody's situation or make it sound that way, but I hope you guys can understand what I mean when I say it's not like our quote unquote typical murder or quote unquote typical case, because it's just different than what you're gonna get on a lot of other true crime networks, you know what I mean? Because they tend to focus
yeah,
on, kind of like just a homicide or like
yeah.
you
No,
know
I
what I
mean, I
mean?
we even say it all the time. Like I'm like, I need something that's not a murder.
Yeah. And sometimes we have to like find one that's not like a homicide, you know what I mean? Not
Yeah,
to say that these cases are good or better, or you know what I mean? They're all bad. This is a morbidly themed show, but talking about murder specifically all the time can be a little rough, and sometimes we need like a
yeah,
different avenue, you know what I mean?
for
If
sure.
I'm sure that other people who routinely consume true crime media can understand that, and it doesn't minimize at all what other people's trauma or experiences are, because these are all awful, bad stories, but I'm sure you guys can understand.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has gone on for quite some time now. You guys have been so patient and amazing. I hope that we all learned something a little new today.
Okay, Toe learned a lot new today. Toe,
Good.
yeah, I had no idea that body sales were a thing.
I was like, I don't like what I learned. However, I learned.
This education is good.
So,
Okay.
well, I'm glad that we could open up a dialogue about this topic, especially as it relates to minority groups and people in, at risk populations who are more likely
Yeah.
to fall prey to these awful, schemes. I feel like they're a scheme, whether legally they are or not. The minority people are often victimized, targeted, etc., and people profit off of that,
Yeah,
and they
absolutely.
shouldn't. So I'm glad that we were able to at least open up that dialogue here today and maybe explore an avenue or a story that you guys haven't really heard much about. And if you guys, I don't want to say enjoyed the content, but enjoyed hanging out with us, I guess, and learning some new information, make sure
Yeah.
that you hit that follow button,
Or
like,
if you enjoyed
subscribe,
hearing about the cremation of my dog, that's
like maybe seek therapy. I don't know.
but
Oh,
yeah.
God. So
And if you have any case suggestions that you would like to send to us, you can do that at saypsycho and LJ will promptly sort your email into a color coded folder and one of us will get back to you.
it will be
Probably
me.
LJ. Yeah.
Like, I am looking into my crystal ball and I see in my future that it is me answering your
Hey,
email.
you know what? I think I've done really good
Hey, I was just
with
about to say, we have different strengths, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
you've been doing well keeping up with my coded email, and um
Yeah, cuz I couldn't find things for a while, but I'm learning now.
yeah, because I have like 50,000 tabs. It's like
Yeah, and
legal.
for me
You need
going
to
into our email is like when you walk into your new friend's house and they're like, "Yeah, help yourself to like whatever you want to eat," but you don't know where the fuck they keep the forks.
yeah, but
Yeah,
you're like, I can't just ask them where they keep the forks.
cuz I feel like I should know that. Like
Oh
they're going to say, "I
god.
keep them in the fork drawer." What the fuck is wrong with you?
And that's pretty much how it is. She's like, "Where's like our LLC paperwork?" I'm like, "It's in the legal folder." Duh.
It's bad. Yeah, but if you have case suggestions that you want to send us, you can send them there or if you just want to tell us we suck or if you want to say, you know, why didn't you buy your dog a custom urn? That's fine, whatever.
Why are you guys talking about dying so much? Like, literally, welcome to the brand. Sorry to be that for you.
Have you met
Oh,
us? Are you
God.
new here? So, yeah, or we are also on Facebook.
Chime in with that one because I know that
Yeah,
one stumps you still, which is
it's a
valid
big,
because
it's
it's
a big
mouthy.
long name.
So I just wanted to make sure that it was like searchable to people, like that it would, be clear that we're a podcast. Say psycho right now, colon, a true crime and podcast, or a true crime and paranormal podcast. I don't even know who we are this week. So
Yeah, but
uh,
Facebook is like probably the platform where we're the most active. We are on Instagram as well, and we're trying to do better over there. And we are on TikTok, but stay tuned for that because we don't know
yeah.
how to TikTok yet.
Now,
Uh,
mayhaps by the time this episode airs, maybe we'll have gotten our TikTok shit together. But at least as of the time of this recording,
I hope we do. I hear TikTok's a party, and we should be there. Let's.
I hear it too. I think right now, kind of just so that you guys can understand where we're at, it's not that we don't want to do it, but in the early stages, there are a lot of things that you guys don't see that we're having to do: filing an LLC, getting the EIN number, setting up the website, business cards, doing this. There's so much that people like don't know goes
Yeah,
into this, especially considering that we're making nothing. Like, this is all.
learning how to edit
Yeah.
has been my struggle for
Yeah,
sure.
but she's been killing it though. Like she's learned a
Yeah,
whole new skill that, we were just paying somebody to do that for us episodes
yeah,
ago, and now she's
and
producing the same type of quality.
yeah, and unfortunately, we realized that outsourcing our editing, at least within the price range that we can afford, we were struggling to find, I guess, consistent, reliable. service. So
Right, because it's people who, like, it's not that's not their full-time gig for the prices they're charging, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Um,
So we decided I decided that I would learn how to edit myself, and
yeah, and when she comes in April, she's gonna teach me how to do it so that I can help with that too, but that's what I mean when I say, like, we have our different strengths, you know, like
yeah, and there's just a lot going on behind the scenes. We're both pretty much dedicating most of our free time to the pod.
no, absolutely. I mean, I work full time. I've got 2
Yeah.
kids. I'm recovering from surgery, and if I'm not doing the pod or working or tending to my children or low key playing Animal Crossing, RIP self, then I'm doing the pod, and mostly it is the pod. So,
It's the pod.
I hope that you guys are enjoying it at least because we do love creating it. But if
Yeah.
you love it, if you're enjoying it, please consider checking out our Patreon. Patreon is what gives us our money for right now.
Patrons
Um,
are special.
they're super special. So basically, if you subscribe on Patreon, the lowest tier is $3 a month.
Measly little dollars. That's it.
Yeah, less than a Starbucks, you guys. Less than a Starbucks. Do you love me less than a Starbucks? If you do, if you love me less than a Starbucks, it's only $3.
Oh my god,
Um,
I love you more than 1,000 Starbies, but
oh
that's
my
just me.
god. Subscribe then to what are you God. But yeah, no. So the Patreon obviously is a really good source for us to start like generating some income. If for whatever reason you can't get at us on Patreon, you can't subscribe, we hear you, we see you. This podcast is still for you, but please consider like engagement, like,
Yeah,
share, invite friends, comment.
comment.
Those things help our
It
algorithm.
helps a lot.
And eventually what will happen is if our numbers get us to where we need to be, we'll get sponsorships from like actual companies who have dollars and they'll be able to be the ones who pay us, which would be great because then, you know, I mean, we've literally put hours. This is like a full-time job for us on top of a full-time job. So yeah, it's we love doing it and we're doing it for free, so we love it. But, you know, if more people help support it, we can do more of it, give you guys better content,
Better
and
content, more frequent content, a lot of things, and that's the goal.
yeah, and if you're in the wheelhouse of like, oh, I don't know if I want to do like a monthly thing, you can check out our website, like we were talking about in the beginning. That's saypsychorightnow.com. If you go there, we have some cool merch. So even if you just like snag a snicker too. That sounds great actually, but snag a sticker and slap it on your
Yeah,
car. That's advertising for us babies.
I'm gonna pass on the Snickers, but
Oh yeah, diabetic woes. Maybe
absolutely.
if you medically cannot, do not have a Snickers. Got me?
Yeah, don't have a Snickers if you're gonna have a medical crisis about it, but
But do
yeah,
have a sticker.
do have a sticker. And actually, if you subscribe to, I think, is it the two highest tiers or the single
Yeah.
highest tier?
So we have the $10 tier and the $15 tier in Patreon. If you
Hmm.
subscribe to those for 3 consecutive months, not only do you get access to a wide range of benefits, which you'll need to check out on Patreon because they're pretty comprehensive once we start getting into those tiers, but you will also get on your third consecutive month of being a patron, you will get a sticker and it's a special sticker of our logo, which we think is really, really cool. Shout out to Savannah's Shenanigans. She
Yeah,
basically plucked the image concept that Toe and I had discussed
out of
out of
our
our
brain
brain,
cases.
and like she is just such like she has so much range as an artist. She's done work for me in the past on some of my other business endeavors, and like I've seen her develop her art over time and other projects she's done. And when we're talking about a dynamic artist, I just need to say like whoa. Whoa. Like this is not her usual style, and yet she took the assignment, understood it, executed it, passed with flying colors, and continues to be the only person that I will pay for artwork for the rest of my life besides tattoo artists because, you know, whatever. I mean, maybe I'll get art from somebody else, but not for this business. No ma'am, Savannah all day. All day.
Yeah, no, she's
Savannah
great. Check her
Shenanigans.
out. Check her out. And she's really great to work with too. She's just all around great, great job. Um,
Five-star human. So yeah, highly recommend. Again, we'll wrap this up at this point. I know we're getting lengthy, but we just want to shout out where shout out is due because she really has done a great job in helping us with that. Like,
yeah, she effectively created our brand with the plague mask people. So,
absolute. That's what I was gonna say.
oh my
Oh,
god, we're so cute.
twinsies. Okay, guys. Well, we love you so much. Thank you for putting up with our side conversations, our banter, our general like selves. Thanks for putting up with us. And we will see you
All
next
right,
week.
wrapping up the shit show. Toodaloo.
Toodaloo. Stealing your line, bitch. Bye.
Oh no! Did we perform a fuckaroni?